Welcome to Unit C. We're still on electromagnetic energy, and we are looking at motors and generators in this lesson. So this page has your textbook pages that you can read and also the outcomes for this lesson. So motors are all around you. Everything you do pretty much in your daily life is using a motor of some point or another. There is a little video here if you want to see what makes your phone vibrate. There's a little vibrating motor in there, and they take apart the phone. That is a link for you. But everything from dryers to hair dryers to cars to blenders to phones all have motors in them. So before we jump right into what a motor is, let's look at these key terms that you do need to know as we're working through this unit. So first one is current, and current is the movement of electrons in a circuit. Okay, so a circuit being a wire that's connected to a device creating the circuit. It's measured, this current is measured in coulombs per second or amperes, amps. A second term you need to know is electrical energy, and you probably remember this from grade 10. It's a little bit familiar, but this is the energy to the movement of charge, or in what we're looking at electrons. So electrons moving is electrical energy. Then we have mechanical energy, and this is the energy to the movement of an object or position of an object. Okay, so this is the movement of an object. And then we have chemical potential energy. So these are three energies that we're going to be dealing with in this section. And this is the energy stored in bonds of a molecule. Now, these might be the bonds in grass or something like that. But in this unit, we're mostly going to be looking at batteries, right? So batteries are where we're storing a lot of the chemical potential energy that we're going to be using in circuits. So in this diagram over here, you've got your chemical potential energy in the battery. It's creating a current through the wires. You have electrons going through the wires. That is your electrical energy in the wires, that movement of electrons. And that movement of electrons is being turned into mechanical energy here as the fan blades move because of our motor. And this is what motors do. They take chemical energy, turn it to electrical energy, and then the output is mechanical energy. Basically, where motors take electrical energy and turn it into mechanical energy. So energy, remember, back to Science 10, it can be transformed from one form or another. And this is the example. There's another example down here. You've got solar energy. The grass has got that chemical potential energy being stored in there. So motors and generators are very similar to each other and to these energy transfers, but they have different energy transfers. They're actually kind of opposites to each other. This is a nice little video here if you want to see what happens when you create a magnetic field. So you can actually not just use magnets to have magnetic fields, but you can create a magnetic field by creating a current. As long as you have a device like a battery hooked up to wires on both ends, you actually will create a current. Not a current. You create a current, yes, but the current, more importantly, creates a magnetic field. And this is how we get, this is like the basis behind motors and generators. This is the key. So here we have a circuit. Now you haven't seen any of the circuit diagram stuff yet. These are wires. These lines are wires. You have a switch here. It's open right now. And then this is just a battery. Okay, so think of your regular old battery. And then we've put a compass here and we've lined the compass up and the circuit up, so this is pointing north. As soon as we close this switch, a current is now going through the wires. And this current is creating a magnetic field. Magnetic field. So current creates a magnetic field and this compass starts to move around. All right, let's take a peek at a little simulation here. so we can see how an electromagnet can create a magnetic field. So we have an electromagnet, and you can actually make one of these at home. There's a video on the next slide on how to do this. It's pretty quick and easy. So basically, you take your, oh, it's not liking being recorded right now. Right, I might not be able to do that. But basically, if you move this battery around, and you have the link to this, you move this battery around, the coil, so the battery is hooked up to these coils, and these coils are just wires. Okay, so they're hooked up to either end of the battery, so we have electrons going through the wires. When the electrons are flowing and moving through the wires, they create a magnetic field. And so you can see all these different magnet little, like, these are to show the magnetic field lines. And if you move it around the compass, that compass will move as your magnetic field moves because of this device, this electromagnet. The more loops you have, the stronger the magnetic field that you create can be. So play around with that simulation on your own, I guess, because it doesn't seem to be working for me when I'm doing a video. Okay. Next page. So a motor. What is, first off, the purpose of having a motor? The purpose is to convert electrical energy into mechanical energy. So we use motors to do something for us, something that needs some kind of movement, right? So the simple thing we saw before was a fan. So how does a fan work? So there's a few key components to a motor. First one is you have to have a permanent magnet. Okay, so you have a big permanent magnet, a north-south on your permanent magnet. Then you need a power source. In this case, we have a battery. This battery is hooked up to some wires, coil of wire, as you'll hear referred to. So basically, wire, this is a wire that's going through here, and it's hooked up to both the positive and negative of this power source. Okay. These are the three main components you have to have a motor. And you could create a motor at home too. I would suggest watching some of the videos. It's kind of cool to see. Anyways, so what happens here is you're creating, in these coils, you're creating a magnetic field. So when they are hooked up to the power source, when the coils are hooked up to the power source, we saw what happens when electrons move through a coil, they create a magnetic field. So if that magnetic field is not going to line up with these magnets that are on either side of it. So as soon as this power source is hooked up, this coil gets magnetized and it's going to flip around and turn to line itself up with the magnets around it. So we can use this knowledge to create a device that keeps turning, that will be our motor. So here we've stepped it out a little bit. The current flows through the coil. So this is your power source, by the way. Power source. It is hooked up to wires that are connected to these brushes, we call them. And then this is called our commutator. So this is metal, and it's hooked up to the coils where our electrons are flowing through to create the magnetic field. And that coil is hooked up, the other end of it is hooked up to the other side commutator, which is hooked up to the brush and to the power source. All right. Now, this is called a half ring commutator. There's kind of holes in it, splits, so you can see as this turns, it's touching the brush, and then when it turns, there's a spot there where it won't be touching the brush, so you won't have a current flowing anymore. So that turns off the current in these wires, and it stops being magnetized for a second. Okay, and then as it keeps turning, a little momentum is going to keep it forward. As it connects again, the coils become magnetized again. and they will repel the permanent magnets around them and keep turning and flipping around. This turning of the coil is what we take and use. So this whole big thing that the coil is on is called the armature. That's called the armature. Think of it as the arm, and that you can attach to anything. So this is where you would attach your fan blades, and so to create that fan motion. Alrighty, so in which of the diagrams, so here we have our motor set up here. Which of the diagrams is there current flowing through the motor? So remember, you're only going to have current flowing through these coils here when your batteries are hooked up, okay, to the coils. So the only way they're connected is these are your brushes. There's your commutator. Your commutators have to be touching the brushes. Okay. So in this case, you have a current going through your wires, so you'll have that motion. Here, your commutators have turned and they're not touching the brushes anymore. There's no contact there. So there's no magnetic field here. No magnetic field at that point because they're not touching the power source. So there's no current going through those wires right now. But the momentum is going to keep them going until they touch again because they're flipping around, they're circling. This arm is circling. And so when they touch again, that quickly creates another magnetic field here, cause the coils to repel from the permanent magnets, and then the cycle continues. Right, these are just the answers. Now, I've tried to explain electric motors, but there's nobody that's going to do a better job than this video. I have just found this video and it's impressive. And it takes it from the beginning, what a circuit is, what a magnet is, how magnets can be spinned using other magnets, how you use an electromagnet, and then finally it talks about all the different parts of a motor and how they are put together, and you do need to know everything in this video. And I would suggest watching this video. Animation is beautiful. It's about 10 minutes, but it's the best way to figure out what a motor is all about, okay, and understand the parts of it. So there's a few ways that we can make magnets stronger. First off, you could create this magnet at home. This is an electromagnet, really simple electromagnet. You basically just take a piece of wire, coil it around, and this wire actually, it's easier if it doesn't have the, what am I trying to say? If it doesn't have the plastic on it. So yeah, you can just take a piece of coil and coil it around your nail, and your current's going to go through those coils and create a magnetic field, which in turn creates this the nail into a magnet because it's inside the magnetic field. It's aligning up all its magnetic pieces. So anyway, how do you build a stronger motor? Stronger motor is what we're looking at. So one thing you can do is increase the number of coils inside in your coil section, right, between your permanent magnets. You could also increase the strength of the permanent magnets. Use really strong magnets. That'll make that coil move even faster. You can change the shape of the magnets. Sometimes you'll see these magnets are rounded around the coil to create more of a push. And then you could also increase the voltage supply. So your battery, you could use a larger battery so you have more voltage and more current going through your coils. So those are the ways to make motors stronger. All right, so then what's a generator? Generators are the opposite of motors. They're great. So instead of getting a mechanical energy out, so instead of being able to turn something, generators, we have to turn a generator. So we have a mechanical input, whatever that might be. It might be us turning a crank. And the output is the electrical output that we get. So it's complete opposite to the motors, where we were putting a battery was our electrical input, and then we would get like the turning of the fan blades was our mechanical output. So now we're talking about generators. We're generating electricity is the way to think of it. So same principle. We have to turn coils inside a permanent magnet. If we turn some coils inside a permanent magnet, we actually create current. And All right, and when we create a current, this is called electrical induction. So we're producing a current when a coil moves next to a magnet or a magnet moves within a coil. In the diagram on the right here, the coil is moving within a magnet and electricity is generated. Now, unfortunately, I can't show this visual, which is just awesome. But basically, this, you see there's no battery this time, right? So check this out, the pickup coil. There's no battery in sight, but all you need to do is move this battery inside the coils back and forth, and you get to see the electrons moving. You actually start to get a current. So all you have to do is move a magnet, any kind of magnet, around coils, and you will actually make the electrons in those coils move. Okay, and in turn make a light go on and create electricity. So we just have to make a magnet move when we have coils around and we get electricity. So that is the goal of a generator, is we need to make these magnets move. So doesn't matter what we use, we can use our hands to crank those magnets around or the coil around. We just have to make sure that those coils and magnets are moving, one or the other. And this is the principle behind wind energy, hydro energy using water. Basically, we're using the water to spin something, to spin our coils inside a magnetic field. In this case, we're using our wind to crank and spin those coils inside of a magnetic field. And that in turn creates a current and electricity. So it doesn't matter what we use. So when we're using coal or natural gas to generate electricity, what we do is we use that coal or natural gas to burn and heat up water into steam. And the steam turns this big turbine and it's hooked up to a generator. And that's how we get our electricity. Okay, so generator, let's just take a look at this and see how they're opposite to motor. So a generator takes that mechanical energy of something turning, and it goes through the generator and produces electrical energy as our output, or electricity. Whereas a motor needs electricity to work, right? It needs a battery or plug into the wall. And it produces a mechanical energy of some sort, some kind of turning, some kind of movement. So you can see how they're both backwards. Love the connection here. All right, so generators can create either alternating current or direct current, AC or DC. You've probably heard that term before, AC or DC. So direct current or DC flows in one direction only. So the electrons are just moving from the negative to the positive in one direction only. It's a constant amount of current that's flowing. And if you're going to use this current to create a magnetic field, it's a very static magnetic field. It's not changing. So your magnetic field might look something like that, or your output's going to look something like this, but it's not changing. And something to make sure you know, just to connect to DC current, is that to create DC current, we need a split ring commutator. And there's your split ring commutators. That's the one we've been looking at up till now. Now, what is alternating current? Alternating current moves back and forth. So it's a two-way current. So first off, the electrons are going one way, and then they're going the other way. They're going one way, so it's a back and forth current. So they're going back and forth and reversing directions at regular intervals really quickly. Okay. So the magnetic fields that you create are changing. So the magnetic field's switching back and forth too. The nice thing about alternating current, and that's why we're use it so much, is that we can send it over long distances. So if we have one area creating electricity, we can send it to another province or something like that over long distances. So these are those wires. When you see the wires you're driving down the road, the electricity wire, those are alternating current in there. Okay. And to create the alternating current, we use a non-split ring to help reverse the current and to create this back and forth current. Okay, so that's what this looks like here, slip ring. All right, so they're not split necessarily. Okay, so basically you're using alternating current when you're using a lamp or most things that plug into the wall. All your household circuitry is all alternating current. And you can check the voltage out because it's going to go in one direction and then the voltage goes in the other direction. So it's constantly changing directions. This is a good video too. It tells you the difference between alternating current and direct current and the power uses. I would suggest watching that video. Also, this is a lovely picture of a generator in action. Like, it's perfect, and the guy does such an amazing job of explaining the difference between and showing you how you can create AC or DC current. And yeah, take a gander at that video. All right, that's the end of today's video. And thanks to all these people for sharing their resources with me as I create this. If you have any questions, make sure to get a hold of me.